Hello, hello. Welcome to Bookcasting. Basically, this is my attempt at doing a podcast, and I clearly have no idea what I'm doing. But I figured out I'd just focus on a particular theme for this week and just see how it goes. The idea is simple. I'm just going to read American poetry. So I'm going to read a lot of old school classic American poetry. You probably haven't heard of any of it. But let's not waste any time. Let's just get on it. So we'll start with Nancy Hanks by Rosemary Benet. If Nancy Hanks came back as a ghost, seeking news of what she loved most, she'd ask for its "Where's my son? What happened to Abe? What's he done? Poor little Abe, left all alone, except for Tom, who's a rolling stone. He was only 9 the year I died. I remember still how hard he cried, scraping along in a little shack with hardly a shirt to cover his back and a prairie wind to blow him down, or pinching times if he went to town. You wouldn't know about my son. Did he grow tall? Did he have fun? Did he learn to read? Did he get to town? Do you know his name? Did he get on?" Okay, that's the end of it. And this is a reply to Nancy Hanks by Julius Silberg. "Yes, Nancy Hanks, the news we will tell of your Abe, whom you loved so well. You asked for its "Where's my son? He lives in the heart of everyone." So that's all referring to basically Abraham Lincoln. You hadn't figured that out. And here is a poem written by Walt Whitman. You definitely know this one. "O Captain, my Captain. O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack, the prize was sought is won. The port is near, the bells I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. But oh heart, oh, the bleeding drops of red, where on the deck my captain lies, fallen cold and dead. O Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells. Rise up, for your flag is flung, for you the bugle trills. For you bouquets and ribbon wreaths, for you the shores a crowding. For you they call the swaying mast, their eager faces turning. Here, Captain, dear father, this arm beneath your head. It is your dream that on the deck you've fallen cold and dead. My Captain does not answer, his lips are pale and still. My father does not feel my arm, he has no pulse nor will. The ship is anchored safe and sound, its voyage closed and done. From fearful trip the victor ship comes in with object won. Exult, O shores, and ring, O bells. But I, with mournful tread, walk the deck, my captain lies, fallen cold and dead." So that's from Walt Whitman. We'll get on to the next one here. Here we are. Start here with Washington by Nancy Bird Turner. He played by the river when he was young. He raced with rabbits along the hills. He fished for minnows and climbed and swung and hooted back at the whip-poor wills. Strong and slender and tall he grew, and then one morning the bugles blew. Over the hills the summons came. Over the river's shining rim he said that the bugles called his name. He knew that his country needed him, and he answered coming and marched away. For many a night and many a day, perhaps when the marches were hot and long, he'd think of the river flowing by, or camping under the winter sky, would hear the whip-poor wills far off sing, boy or man, and in peace or strife, he loved America all his life. Oh yeah, excuse me. Just one. Okay, just checking on something. Right. Next one here. This one, as you can see, these are on George Washington. So the next one is about George Washington, called George Washington, by Stephen Vincent Benet. "Sing hey for bold George Washington, that jolly British tar, King George's famous admiral from Hull to Zanzibar. No, wait a minute, something's wrong. George wished to sail the foam, but when his mother thought aghast of Georgie shining up a mast, her tears and protests flowed so fast that George remained at home. Sing ho for brave George Washington, the staid Virginian squire. who farms his fields and hunts his hounds and aims at nothing higher. Stop, stop, it's going wrong again. George liked to live on farms, but when the colonies agreed they could and should and would be freed, they called on George to do the deed, and George cried, "Shoulder arms! Sing ha for Emperor Washington, that hero of renown, who freed his land from Britain's rule to win a golden crown." No, no! That's what George might have won, but didn't, for he said, "There's not much point about a king. They're pretty, but they're apt to sting. And as for crowns, the heavy thing would only hurt my head. Sing ho for our George Washington, at last I've got it straight. The first in war, the first in peace, the goodly and the great. But when you think about him now, from here to Valley Forge, remember this, he might have been a highly different specimen, and where on earth would we be then? I'm glad that George was George." Okay. Well, here's an inscription at Mount Vernon. It's anonymous, so we don't know who wrote it. "Washington, the brave, the wise, the good, supreme in war and council and in peace, valiant without ambition, discreet without fear, confident without presumption, in disaster calm, in success moderate, in all himself, the hero, the patriot, the Christian, the father of nations, the friend of mankind, who, when he had won all, renounced all, and sought in the bosom of his family and of nature retirement, and in the hope of religion immortality." Okay, so let's see here. Got some more. Okay, right. Right. Hold on here. Takes a minute. There's a lot of in-between stuff in the book here I got. Yeah. Aha. There we go. Yep, found it. Just what I was looking for. Alright. There's a lot to be read here, so here we go. Let's start with this one. Okay. This is called Barbara... I'm going to pronounce this last name wrong. Fritchie? By John Greenleaf Whittier. Okay, here it goes. Up from the meadows, rich with corn. Okay, there we go. Yeah. Up from the meadows, rich with corn, clear in the cool September morn, the clustered spires of Frederick stand, green-walled by the hills of Maryland. Round about them orchards sweep, apple and peach tree fruited deep, fair as a garden of the Lord to the eyes of the famished rebel horde. On that pleasant morn of the early fall, when Lee marched over the mountain wall, over the mountains winding down, horse and foot into Frederick town, 40 flags with silver stars, 40 flags with crimson bars, flapped in the morning wind. The son of noon looked down and saw not one. Up rose old Barbara Fretchie then, bowed with her 80 years and 10. Bravest of all in Frederick town, she took up the flag the men hauled down. In her attic window the staff she set, to show that one heart was loyal yet. Up the street came the rebel tread, Stonewall Jackson riding ahead. Under his slouched hat, left and right, he glanced, the old flag met his sight. Halt! The dust-brown ranks stood fast. Fire! One blazed the rifle blast. It shivered the window pane and sash. It rent the banner with seam and gash. Quick as it fell from broken staff, Dame Barbara snatched the silken scarf. She leaned far out on the window-sill and shook it forth with royal will. "Shoot if you must this old grey head, but spare your country's flag," she said. A shade of sadness, a blush of shame, over the face of the leader came. The nobler nature within him stirred to life at that woman's deeds and word. "Who touches a hair on yon grey head dies like a dog. March on," he said. All day long through Frederick Street sounded the tread of marching feet. All day long that free flag tossed over the heads of the rebel host. Ever its torn fields rose and fell on the loyal winds that loved it well. And through the hill gap sunset light shone over it with a warm good night. Barbara Fretchie's work is over, and the rebel rides on, his raids no more. Honor to her, and let a tear fall for her sake on Stonewall's bier. Over Barbara Fretchie's grave, flag of freedom and union wave. Peace and order and beauty draw round the symbol of light and law. And ever the stars above look down on thy stars below in Frederick town. Okay, so that was Barbara Fretchie. And we're on to the next one, The Blue and the Gray. This is The Blue and the Gray by Francis Miles Finch. I did mention last one is from, yeah. Okay. Francis Miles Finch, The Blue and Gray. By the flow of the inland river, whence the fleets of iron have fled, where the blades of the grave grass quiver, asleep are the ranks of the dead, under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the one the blue, under the other the gray. These in the robings of glory, robings of glory, should say. These in the robbings of glory, those in the gloom of defeat, all with the battle blood gory, in the dusk of eternity meet, under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the laurel the blue, under the willow the gray. From the silence of sorrowful hours the desolate mourners go, lovingly laden with flowers, alike for the friend and the foe, under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the roses the blue, under the lilies the gray. So with an equal splendor the morning sun rays fall, with a touch impartially tender, on the blossoms blooming for all, under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, broidered with gold the blue, mellowed with gold the gray. So when the summer calleth on forest and field to grain, with an equal murmur falleth the cooling drip of the rain, under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, wet with the rain the blue, wet with the rain the gray. Sadly, but not with upbraiding, the generous deed was done, in the storm of the years that are fading. No braver battle was won under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day, under the blossoms the blue, under the garlands the gray. No more shall the war cry sever, or the winding rivers be red. They banish our anger forever, when they're laureled the graves of our dead, under the sod and the dew, waiting the judgment day. Love and tears for the blue, tears and love for the gray. Alright, so here's the next one, Sheridan's Ride. Sheridan's Ride by T. Butcherman Reed. Okay. Up from the south at break of day, bringing to Winchester fresh dismay, the affrighted air with a shudder bore, like a herald in haste to chieftain's door, the terrible grumble and rumble and roar, telling the battle was on once more, and Sheridan 20 miles away. And wider still those billows of war thundered along the horizon's bar, and louder yet into Winchester rolled the roar of the Red Sea uncontrolled, making the blood of the listener cold. And as he thought of the stake in that fiery fray, and Sheridan 20 miles away, but there was a road from Winchester town, a good broad highway leading down, and there through the flush of the morning light, a steed as black as the steeds of night was seen to pass as with eagle flight. As if he knew the terrible need, he stretched away with utmost speed. Hills rose and fell, but his heart was gay, with Sheridan 15 miles away. Still spring from those swift hoofs, thundering south the dust like the smoke from the cannon's mouth, or the trail of a comet sweeping faster and faster, foreboding to traitors the doom of disaster. The heart of the steed and the heart of the master were beating like prisoners assaulting their walls, impatient to be where the battlefield calls. Every nerve of the charger was strained to the full play, with Sheridan only 10 miles away. Under his spurning feet the road like an arrowy alpine river flowed, and the landscape sped away behind like an ocean flying before the wind, and the steed like a bark fed with furnace fire swept on with his wild eyes full of fire. But lo, he is nearing his heart's desire. He is snuffing the smoke of the roaring fray, with Sheridan only 5 miles away. The first that the general saw were the groups of stragglers when the retreating of troops. What was done, what to do? A glance told him both. Then striking his spurs with a terrible oath, he dashed down the line mid a storm of huzzas, and the wave of retreat checked its course there, because the sight of a master compelled it to pause. With foam and with dust the black charger was gray, by the flash of the eye and the red nostrils play. He seemed to the whole great army to say, I have brought you Sheridan all the way from Winchester town to save the day. Hurrah, hurrah for Sheridan! Hurrah, hurrah for horse and men! And when their statues are placed on high, under the dome of the Union sky, the American soldiers' temple of fame, there with glorious general's name, be it said in letters both bold and bright, here is the steed that saved the day, by carrying Sheridan into the fight from Winchester 20 miles away. Whew. Excuse me. Okay. Whew. Yeah. All right. Oh yeah. This this is gonna be a fun one. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. So the next one I'm gonna read is "The Sword of Robert Lee" by Abram J. Ryan. Forth from its scabbard, pure and bright, flashed the sword of Lee. Far in the front of the deadly fight, high over the brave and the cause of right, its stainless sheen like a beacon bright led us to victory. Out of its scabbard, where full long it slumbered peacefully, roused from its rest by the battle's song, shielding the feeble, smiting the strong, guarding the right, avenging the wrong, gleamed the sword of Lee. Forth from its scabbard high in the air, beneath Virginia's sky, and they who saw it gleaming there, and knew who bore it, knelt to swear that where that sword led, they would dare to follow and to die. Out of its scabbard never hand waved sword from stain, as free, not purer sword led braver band, nor braver bled for a brighter land, nor brighter land had a cause so grand, nor cause a chief like Lee. Forth from its scabbard how we prayed that sword might victor be, and when our triumph was delayed, and many a heart grew sore afraid, we still hoped on while gleaming the blade of noble Robert Lee. Forth from its scabbard all in vain, bright flashed the sword of Lee. 'Tis shrouded now in its sheath again, it sleeps the sleep of our noble slain, defeated yet without a stain, proudly and peacefully. Okay, this is the Conquered Banner by Abram J. Ryan. Furl that banner, for 'tis weary, round its staff 'tis drooping dreary. Furl it, fold it, it is best, for there's not a man to wave it, and there's not a sword to save it, and there's not one left to lave it, and in the blood which heroes gave it, and its foes now scorn and brave it. Furl it, hide it, let it rest. Take that banner down, 'tis tattered, broken in its shaft and shattered, and the valiant host are scattered over whom it floated high. Oh, 'tis hard for us to fold it, hard to think there's none to hold it, hard that those who once unrolled it now must furl it with a sigh. Furl that banner, furl it sadly, once 10,000s hailed it gladly, and 10,000s wildly, madly swore it should forever wave, swore that foreman's sword should never hearts like theirs entwine dissever, and that flag should float forever over their freedom or their grave. Furl it, for the hands that grasp it, and the hearts that fondly clasp it, cold and dead are lying low, and that banner it is trailing, while around it sound the wailing of its people in their woe. For though conquered they adored it, loved the cold, dead hands that bore it, weep for those who fell before it, pardon those who trailed and tore it, but oh, widely they deplore it, now who furl and fold it so. Furl that banner, true, 'tis gory, yet 'tis wreathed around with glory, and 'twill live in song and story, though its folds are in the dust. For its fame on brightest pages, penned by poets and by sages, shall go sounding down the ages. Furl its folds, though now we must. Furl that banner softly, slowly, treat it gently, it is holy, for it droops above the dead. Touch it not, unfold it never, let it droop there, furled forever, for its people's hopes are fled. Whew. Okay, let's get to the next batch here. Oh, you can't do a reading of American poetry without reading what you would never have realized was actually a poem. Actually, I should tell you the story of this. I'm going to be reading next The Star-Spangled Banner. This was by Francis Scott Key. This was a poem long before it became the national anthem. And it has an interesting story, believe it or not. I'm going to tell you the story, because I don't know how many of you may know about it. Now, I'm going to summarize. This isn't like the most beat for beat exactly what happened. You should look up the history of it, is what I'm saying. But here's a summarization of what happened. So, Francis Scott Key, in the War of 1812, yeah, because America was fighting Britain, but it was well after independence. So in the War of 1812, I'm not going to get into the explanation about that, but here's what you need to know. Francis Scott Key was able to see this fight that was happening in a fort, basically. It was a fort. So there's a fight in this fort between the British fighting the Americans in this fort, basically. And what happens is there's fighting and fighting all night long, all the way in the dark. And at dawn, when the first light is able to see, Francis Scott Key sees that the American flag was still standing. Even despite all the fighting and all the shooting and all that stuff, the flag still stood in the midst of that, after the midst of all that battle that happened the previous night. And that's where this poem is. This is what the poem is about, and that's what the national anthem is about. So I just think that's interesting. I don't know if you know that. Well, now you do. Anyways, The Star-Spangled Banner by Francis Scott Key. O say, can you see, by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars, through the perilous fight, over the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. O say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave? On the shore, dimly seen through the mists of the deep, where the foe's haughty host in dread silence reposes, what is that which the breeze over the towering steep, as it fitfully blows, now conceals, now discloses, now it catches the gleam of the morning's first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines on the stream? 'Tis the star-spangled banner, oh long may it wave, over the land of the free, and the home of the brave. And where is that band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country, should leave us no more? Their blood has washed out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave. And the star-spangled banner in triumph doth wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever, when freemen shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation, blessed with victory and peace. May the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, for our cause it is just. And this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave over the land of the free and the home of the brave. Yeah, and that's the Star-Spangled Banner. Okay, now we're on to the next one. The Flag Goes by Henry H. Bennett. Hats off! Along the street there comes a blare of bugles, a ruffle of drums, a flash of color beneath the sky. Hats off, the flag is passing by. Blue and crimson and white it shines over the steel-tipped ordered lines. Hats off, the colors before us fly. But more than the flag is passing by, sea fights and land fights, grim and great, fought to make and to save the state. Weary marches and sinking ships, cheers of victory on dying lips. Days of plenty and years of peace, march of a strong land's swift increase. Equal justice, right and law, stately honor and reverent awe, sign of a nation great and strong, toward her people from foreign wrong. Pride and glory and honor all, live in the colors to stand or fall. Hats off, along the street there comes a blare of bugles, a ruffle of drums, and loyal hearts are beating high. Hats off, the flag is passing by. Okay. Whew. Excuse me. I mean, throat there. Let me get to the next section here. Ah, there we go. There we go. Yep. Awesome. Okay, here we are on the next section here. Let me right. Let's do it. 4th of July Night by Dorothy Aldous. Pinwheels whirling round, spit sparks upon the ground, and rockets shot up high, and blossom in the sky, blue and yellow, green and red, flowers falling on my head, and I don't ever have to go to bed, to bed, to bed. Yeah, so that's the one for July 9th. Now we're on to America by Samuel Francis Smith. Oh, this one you know. This one you know. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside let freedom ring. My native country thee, land of the noble free. Thy name I love thy rocks and rills, thy woods and templed hills. My heart with rapture thrills, like that above. Let music swell the breeze, and ring from all the trees. Sweet freedom's song, let mortal tongue awake. Let all that breathe partake, let rocks that their silence break, the sound prolong. Our fathers, God, to thee, author of liberty, to thee I sing. Long may our land be bright, with freedom's holy light. Protect us by thy might, great God, our King. Okay, so that's America by Francis Scott Samuel. This one's just called I've Got a Rocket, and there's no name, no title for who wrote it. So, I've got a rocket in my pocket. I cannot stop to play. Away it goes. I burnt my toes. It's Independence Day. Okay, so that's the one. And now we're on to 4th of July. This is 4th of July by I'm going to butcher this name, Marchette Shoot, okay? Yeah, here we go. 4th of July, 4th of July, that's when the flag goes waving by, and the crackers crack, and the pop guns pop, and the big guns boom, and never stop, and we watch parades, and listen to speeches, and picnic around on all the beaches, and it usually rains, and it's always hot, but we all like 4th of July a lot. And now we're on to Paul Revere's Ride. Yes, Paul Revere's Ride, hopefully you've heard of it, by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Let's go. Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the northern church tower as a signal light, one if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm, for the country folk to be up and to arm. Then he said, good night, and with muffled oar silently rowed to the Charleston shore, just as the moon rose over the bay, where swinging wide at her moorings lay the Somerset British man of war, a phantom ship with each mast and spar, across the moon like a poison bar, and a huge black bulk that was magnified by its own reflection in the tide. Meanwhile his friend through alley and street wanders and watches with eager ears, till in the silence around him he hears the muster of men at the barrack door, the sound of arms and the tramp of feet, and the measured tread of the grenadiers marching down to their boats on the shore. Then he climbed the tower of the Old North Church by the wooden stairs with stealthy tread to the belfry chamber overhead, and startled the pigeons from their perch on the sombre rafters that round him made masses and moving shapes of shade by the trembling ladder, step and tall, to the highest window in the wall, where he paused to listen and look down a moment on the roofs of the town, and the moonlight flowing over all. Beneath in the churchyard lay the dead in their night encampment on the hill, wrapped in the silence so deep and still that he could hear, like a sentinel's tread, the watchful night wind as he went, creeping along from tent to tent, and seeming to whisper all is well. A moment only he feels the spell of the place and the hour, and the secret dread of the lonely belfry and the dead, for suddenly all his thoughts are bent on a shadowy something far away, where the river widens to meet the bay, a line of black that bends and floats on the rising tide like a bridge of boats. Meanwhile, impatient to mount and ride, booted and spurred with heavy stride, on the opposite shore walked Paul Revere. Now he patted his horse's side, now gazed at the landscape far and near, then impetuous stamped the earth, and turned and tightened his saddle girth, but mostly he watched with eager search the belfry tower of the Old North Church, as it rose above the graves on the hill, lonely and spectral and sombre and still. And lo, as he looks on the belfry's height, a glimmer and then a gleam of light. He springs to the saddle, to the bridle he turns, but lingers and gazes till full on his sight a second lamp in the belfry burns. A hurry in the hoofs, a hurry of hoofs in a village street, a shape in the moonlight, a bulk in the dark, and beneath from the pebbles in passing a spark, struck out by a steed, flying fearless and fleet. That was all, and yet through the gloom and the light, the fate of a nation was riding that night, and the spark struck out by that steed in his flight, kindled the land into flame with its heat. He has left the village and mounted the steep, and beneath him tranquil and broad and deep, in the mystic meeting the ocean tide, and under the alders that skirt its edge, now soft on the sand, now loud on the ledge, is heard the tramp of his steed as he rides. It was 12 by the village clock when he crossed the bridge into Medford town. He heard the crowing of the cock and the barking of the farmer's dog, and felt the damp of the river fog that rises after the sun goes down. It was 1 by the village clock when he galloped into Lexington. He saw the gilded weathercock swim in the moonlight as he passed, and the meeting house windows, blank and bare, gaze at him with spectral glare, as if they already stood aghast at the bloody work they would look upon. It was 2 by the village clock when he came to the bridge in Concord town. He heard the beating of the flock and the twitter of the birds among the trees, and felt the breath of the morning breeze blowing over the meadows brown. And one was safe and asleep in his bed who at the bridge would be first to fall, who that day would be lying dead, pierced by a British musket ball. You know the rest in the books you have read, how the British regulars fired and fled, how the farmers gave them ball for ball from behind each fence and farmyard wall, chasing the redcoat down the lane, then crossing the fields to emerge again under the trees at the turn of the road, and only passing to fire and load. So through the night wrote Paul Revere, and so through the night went his cry of alarm to every Middlesex village and farm, a cry of defiance and not of fear, a voice in the darkness, a knock at the door, and a word that shall echo forevermore. For borne on the night wind of the past, through all our history to the last, in the hour of darkness and peril and need, the people will waken and listen to hear the hurrying hoofbeats of that steed, and the midnight message of Paul Revere. Excuse Excuse me. Whew. Let's see, where should I go now? Sorry, clearing my throat here. Ah, that's it. Yes. Okay. Let me see here. Ah. Yes, okay. Gotcha. Okay, good, good. I have it. Okay. Okay. I'm just gonna read a couple of more poems, and then we'll call it. So the first one I'll read is Soldier by Rupert Brooke. If I should die, think only this of me, that there's some corner of a foreign field that is... Oh, no. No, never mind. That was a different poem. Not what I thought that was. Screw it. I'll just read this one instead. Yeah. We'll read this one instead. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to read this one and we'll call it Landing of the Pilgrim Fathers by Felicia Dorothea Hemans. The breaking waves dashed high on the stern and the rock-bound coast, and the woods against a stormy sky their giant branches tossed, and the heavy night hung dark, the hills and waters over when a band of exiles moored their bark on the wild New England shore. Not as the conqueror comes, they true-hearted came, not with the roll of the stirring drums and the trumpet that sings of fame, not as the flying come in silence and in fear. They shook the depths of the desert's gloom with their hymns of lofty cheer. Amidst the storm they sang, and the stars heard in the sea, and the sounding isles and the dim woods rang to the anthem of the free. The ocean eagle soared from his nest by the white waves' foam, and the rocking pines of the forest roared that was welcome home. There were men with hoary hair amidst the pilgrim band. Why had they come to wither there, away from their childhood's land? There was woman's fearless eye, lit by her deep love's truth. There was manhood's brow, serenely high, in the fiery heart of youth. What sought they thus afar? Bright jewels of the mind, the wealth of seas, the spoils of war. They sought a faith's pure shrine. Aye, call it holy ground, the soil where first they trod. They that have left unstained. Yeah, they have left unstained what they have found, freedom to worship God. All right. Excuse me. I think we'll call that for tonight. So yeah, I hope this is interesting. Just a fun little collection of classic American poetry. Yeah. See you later.